Hi everyone, it's Laura here, and in today's video I'm going to share with you a card that I created with stamps by Pink Your Life and the masking technique. The stamp set that I will be using is called Ricettario, which means recipe book. Pink Your Life is an Italian brand and it has a wide range of clear stamps. This one here really spoke to me because besides crafting, I really like cooking and baking, and I had to have it basically. I think this will be nice to create your own recipe book, and I cannot wait to create mine. But for today, I'm going to share with you how to use it on a card. I decided to use the masking technique, and what I'm doing now is creating my mask. So I stamped the image on some repositionable packaging labels. So these have a back with a low-tack adhesive on them so that we can adhere the mask on our paper without fear of ripping the paper when we remove it. What you would normally do is to first stamp your image and then adhere the mask so that you can protect that area and do some more stamping on top. I am doing that and the mask will protect the paper underneath, but for some reason this time around I forgot to stamp my image first. I will still be able to do it and to position it correctly because I'm using my Mini Misty, which helps me have a very accurate positioning of my stamps. But if you decide to reproduce this project, please first stamp the little chef, mask it with the masking paper, and then stamp the rest of the images, as it's much safer that way. As you saw, I used the smaller images in the set to create the background for my card, and the little chef will be the focal point. The paper on which I'm stamping is Nina Solar White cardstock by Crafter's Companion. I cut it first with the Lawn Fawn large stitched rectangle stackables dies, with the largest die in the set, and I trimmed the bottom because I didn't want the stitching over there. You will see why when we get into the design of the card. The ink that I used is by Spectrum Noir and it's their alcohol-proof black ink. It was the first time for me using it and I have to say that I really like it. It's dark black and it stamps really nicely and there is no bleeding whatsoever with my Spectrum Noir markers, which are my coloring medium of choice today. I started by coloring the face of the little girl, and for that I used FS9, FS4 and FS2. For the tongue I used CR6 and CR8, and then I moved on and started coloring the hair, for which I used TN2 and TN3. I'm adding some flicking motions so that I am creating some texture, and I'm also leaving some white spaces for the highlights. And now I am also coming in with my TN5 to deepen the shadows and build some contrast in those areas. Going back in with the TN3 to blend everything out and then moving on to the hat, which I wanted to keep white, so I added some shading to it using my cool gray markers. The darker one is the IG5 marker and the lighter one is the IG1. I'm also using my colorless blender to blend everything out towards the white areas. And these two markers are quite far apart from each other, so the IG5 is quite a bit darker than the IG1. So I had to work at it a little bit, but I wanted to build some nice contrast to make the image really pop, and this is why I chose these two markers. I'm using my blender also to blend the two markers together a little bit, but because when you use the blender pen on top of your markers, it can bleach them a little bit, I'm also going back in with one last layer of my IG1 marker to get a nice and smooth color basically on my image. And because I had a bit of higher contrast in the hat that I had going on the face of the little girl, I decided to add in one more shade, which is my TN3 marker, to make my shadows a little bit darker and get a cohesive look between all the elements of the image. Next, I moved on and started coloring the images on the background. I chose the color palette based on the patterned paper that I'll be using on the background of this card. So I referred to that and I used my Spectrum markers color chart to pick the right shades that were going to match as closely as possible the ones in the patterned paper. So I have BP2, BP1 and PP1 for my pinks, TB3, TB2 and TB1 for the blues, CG2, CG3, CG1 for the greens, and finally CT4, CT2 and CT1 for my yellows. The white areas were just shaded in with the IG1 marker, and for the forks and the spoons that were going to be silver basically, I used again IG5 and IG1. I trimmed the top of this panel because I wanted this basically to be sort of a strip on the front of my card, but then at this point I realized that I wanted my little girl to pop out a little bit more. So I decided to add a drop shadow all around her using IG5 and IG1 again, so I didn't introduce any new marker. But basically by adding this dark area behind her, we are sort of pushing her forward and making her the foreground image. Because the hat was blending in a little bit too much with the shadow that I created around the girl, because they are colored with the same markers, I went over with a coat of TB2 and TB1, which are light blues, to give a little bit of a blue hue to the hat. And then I moved on and started working on my card base. For that, I die cut some patterned paper from the Lawn Fawn Perfectly Plaid Spring 6x6 paper pad using the large stitch rectangle stackables dies, also by Lawn Fawn. And then I decided that I wanted to create some decorative elements to go around my focal panel. So I die cut some black cardstock, first with the Lawn Fawn large stitched rectangle stackables dies again in the same size as my base, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And then I created two borders from this black cardstock using the Valentine's borders dies, also by Lawn Fawn. I adhered them to the top and the bottom of my focal panel, leaving basically just the area with the scalloped detail peeking through. And I think that this is a really nice way to make your focal panels stand out, because those black borders really pop against our colorful patterned paper. At this point, all that was left to do was to adhere the main panel over the background. As you can see, I'm using Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and I'm trying to center everything on my card base. For the sentiment, I used this die cut. This is by Create a Smile Stamps and it spells out the word hello in this nice brush lettering type of font. And then I could adhere the card to a top folding A2 card base cut at 5.5 by 8.5 inches and scored at 4.5 inches. And I couldn't stay away from some finishing touches, so I added some shimmer to the chef's hat and to a few of the images on the background. The pen that I'm using is a Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen, and this, as I said, adds a nice and subtle shimmer to your card, so I really like it. Lastly, I used my white gel pen to add some lines and little dots on some of the areas of the card. And I am really enjoying using my gel pens lately. You have seen them featured in a lot of my videos. I think they're a really nice tool for any card maker. And that's my card for today. I really hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you found it useful. If you did, don't forget to let me know by leaving a comment or giving this video a thumbs up. If you're not already, you can subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to be always up to date with any new videos that I share. As always, thank you so much for supporting my channel with all your interactions and simply by watching my videos. And I'll catch you guys soon with the next one. Ciao!